Good morning. Sorry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mayor Wasco,
Present.
Vice Mayor Kaplan,
Yes, here.
Councilmember London,
Here.
Councilmember McCormick,
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Sardinius,
Here.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum. Please
Okay.
rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, the first item is public comments.
Fausto Gomez.
Good morning. Fausto Gomez, 765 Crandon Boulevard, Penthouse 10. I'm here for two purposes. One is to thank you. You and the previous council. The Key Biscayne President's Council, Condominium President's Council, asked the previous council to do the Riftilla study on equitable distribution or equitable collection of the stormwater fee. They contracted Raftillis, and this council then subsequently approved it. So on behalf of myself and my neighbors, I want to thank all of you for doing that. Second, I'm here to sort of ask for some clarity on expenditures on the stormwater fee. From what I understand is this year, we're going to go up 15% to $2.1 million, roughly. But then when I look at the numbers on operation and maintenance, flood control mitigation, and when we look about what the funds that we need to do to pay for the 2016 bond, they come out to a total of $1,375,000. So my question is, where's the $725,000? Okay. Now let's look a little bit more into the budget. Where that money is for $800,000 loan payment from the state of Florida, basically to plan for the K-8 system, but the K-8 Zone 1. But I had understood that we already had a contract to do that with AECOM, and then we also have a contract with Black & Beach for construction management work, roughly. But construction management is not going to start until 2025, according to the administration's presentation at the last meeting. So that sort of leaves me wondering. And then I also notice in the memorandum from the administration to you that one of the reasons for the increase is the Dig One approach. But I remember Mr. Kaplan, I remember Mr. Moss raising questions about the Dig One approach. And if those questions were raised, and I remember this council saying we need to review that, then why are we funding the Dig One approach if there are questions about it and it was raised by some council members? Now, understand me, I am not here, to speaking against the resiliency projects. What I am here is seeking clarity. Let's really have an accounting of what resiliency is going to cost us. Let's not take some money and hide it in this pocket and hide it in the other pocket. Let's actually be very clear of what we're doing. Again, obviously the residents of Key Biscayne have entrusted you to lead our community, and you will make whatever decisions you deem most appropriate. I only suggest that this item is not ripe. I also suggest that you should take a couple of days, review the budget carefully, okay, and come back and approve it. As John McCain said in the Florida Senate, in the U.S. Senate, there is no more delicious privilege than spending other people's money. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, Louisa Conway.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for allowing us to comment on this. I also want to thank Ben and the staff for the new methodology that they're using for the stormwater. I'm actually just up here too, just to get some clarity on the fund itself and what its purpose is. So, so some of the questions that I have is basically for 2023, it looks like we collected 1.835 million, and then it was about 759,000 to operate it. And it looked like it leaves us with a surplus of over $1 million. And then when I was looking at the 2024, again, I'm just using the budget book, it looks like it leaves us with a surplus of 712, which is different from the numbers that are up here. There's definitely confusion because we don't understand what we're collecting for in the stormwater fund and what exactly we're funding and what type of maintenance is taking place. And then we hear things like, okay, it's going to be $310 million to put in a brand new stormwater system. But for taxpayers, we're already paying you $1.82 million, whatever, for the stormwater system. So it's very unclear what we're doing right now, and I'd like to get a better handle on that and a better understanding, Mr. Manager, on what exactly it is we're paying for. And the other thing is, right now, for the percentage increase, it looks like it's mostly the 15% is for overhead to pay for a loan, an $870,000 loan that was taken out. So we moved stormwater up by 50% in 2019. We're now proposing 15%. So this is 65% of stormwater fees are going up. So again, we have some questions. I appreciate, I was just talking to Colleen, got some clarity on that. But we've got to explain how you're using this fund, the money that's being transferred out. How is that being utilized for the capital improvement projects? And can that then lower what our tax obligation is to the stormwater fund? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, Steve Simon.
Steve Simon, 335 Harbor Lane. It appears that the subject before you today is to approve a formula that reallocates costs among the 7,229 parcels that are referred to in the consultant's report, and as to the actual dollar amounts to be paid per parcel, to factor in the added costs pertaining to our upcoming K8 project mentioned in the manager's introduction pertaining to the, quote, operational maintenance, personnel costs, and servicing the debt of the loan. All of this ties into Chapter 29 of our municipal code entitled Stormwater Utility System, and thus will partially revise it. What I don't see mentioned or calculated into the rate or fee anywhere, and which I ask you to consider, is the most obvious missing variable. If we are going to plan and construct and then operate an expansion, a massive upgrade, to our stormwater management system, which we are very much in the thick of doing, that missing variable is land acquisition. I am fully aware that many details of that system remain to be decided, such as the total number of pump stations, their footprints, how much emphasis will be placed upon floodplain management, labeled by some as inundation areas. Enough is known, though, already known, for some land acquisition revenue to be factored into the rate structure. From a revenue perspective, not only will you need revenue sources to buy land, but in the case of private property easements, if modeled like a conservation easement, there may be a reduction of the income stream from property taxes. My request is that as you are about to settle upon a tailored fee structure, is to add something on top for land acquisition and to spread it evenly among all 7,229 parcels, the justification for doing so evenly coming from section 29.3 of our Muni Code that says the benefit is and will be to all property within the village. Specifically, I ask that this non-ad valorem assessment each year the equivalent of 1% of ad valorem revenue be divided by the 7,000 plus parcels, and that on the outlay side, those funds only be used for land acquisition. By my arithmetic, That's projected to be around $300,000 for the upcoming fiscal year, divided by 7,229 parcels, thus about $41 per parcel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. You want to read the resolution?
Yes, the next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, relating to the provision of a stormwater management system within the village, providing for authority, definitions, and interpretation, establishing the method by which the proposed stormwater utility fee shall be calculated, stating the estimated cost of providing a stormwater management system, the initial rate and the maximum rate for the provision of the stormwater management system, providing for levy and imposition of a stormwater utility fee, confirming the initial rate resolution, establishing the method by which the proposed stormwater utility fee shall be made, providing for equalization, filing, and lien on properties to be assessed, providing for effect of adoption of final assessment resolution, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Item moved and seconded. Okay, Mr. Manager, walk us through here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about this today. First, I want to make sure we're clear what we're discussing. We are discussing, quite simply, raising our stormwater fees 15%, or approximately $300,000, to implement our FY24 goals, addressing our flooding, our drainage, and our stormwater system. There are, however, two things that are impacting how this is being implemented. The first one is the new stormwater methodology, which was approved last August, on how we allocate the funds across our residents. I think you recall, a number of you were there when we made those decisions last August. And then the second one is itself that 15% increase on what we're trying to do. Our team will come up and go through it in details, but I'd like to summarize just a couple things of what we're trying to achieve. First and foremost, and this is quite simple, is this money is to operate and maintain our existing stormwater system, to address our everyday flooding that we face on a regular basis. That is the primary purpose of this fund. Secondly, it is also the fund that is available as an enterprise fund where we can begin to set the conditions of how we will invest in this upcoming stormwater investment as we look at a more robust and resilient island. So I'll let the staff go into details, but I want to make sure we put into context. The methodology has been approved. It was approved last year. We are increasing or requesting to increase by 15%, approximately $300, addressing flooding, which is what we do on a regular basis. And secondly, beginning to set conditions for this investment we need to address our stormwater across the island.
Mr. Manager,
Yes.
one point to get out by way of clarification. We need to take action on this item today, is my understanding.
We do, yes, and maybe Chad can address that in more detail.
So under state law, today is the last day we need to, that we have eligible to adopt this increase in the fee, because this fee was placed a couple years ago on the tax bill. So there's a statutory process for when you increase the fees and the timeframes in which you need to adopt the fees so the tax collector can get it in time.
And lastly, in the presentations, I hope that the questions that were broached by Fausto and Luisa will be addressed specifically.
I think the slides do answer most of their questions. Obviously, if you all want to ask additional questions, you may.
I think, Joe.
Hold on. You want to see the
Real quick, yeah. Basically, Luisa's question of why we going to charge for the existing storm sewer system, where we're going to spend X amount of dollars to build a new storm sewer system, because we got to take care of the storm sewer system we have until you have a new storm system. If you don't, you'll have no storm sewer system. And it's not great, but it's what we have. We have to maintain it. So that's why we're paying today, even though they're going to pay more tomorrow. If that answers your question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Mayor, if I would, Cairo, if you please present. And obviously, we have Capital Improvement Director, I gave you a promotion, Program Manager, and the Chief Financial Officer here for any other detailed questions.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. The purpose of this presentation, as Mr. Manager mentioned, is to go over the stormwater fund, what we do with it, and the proposed increase. So let's start with a little rundown of what the stormwater utility fund covers. The purpose is to operate and maintain the village's making quite a stir here. Operate and maintain the village's stormwater system and drainage facilities. As we all know, the revenue source is the village stormwater utility fees, and the expenditures, which might address some of the comments just now, they include activities supporting the construction, reconstruction, repair, improvements, and extension of the stormwater system. The oversight for this fund is provided by myself as the Public Works Director. This slide gives you gives all of us a quick history of the rate ordinances and how they have progressed over time. The original rates were calculated by equivalent residential units, and they were established in October of 1993 by Ordinance 1993-46, and the equivalent residential unit charge per month was set at $5. Subsequently, it was amended on March 2011 by Resolution 2011-04, and it increased to $8.90. And the last time it was increased was on September of 2019 by Resolution, by Ordinance 2019-60, and the new rate went up to 16.9. Now, the latest ordinance that was passed, as Mr. Mayor mentioned, on August 2022 was only to change the stormwater fee methodology. That one did not increase the rate at that time. So in this slide, we can see what our I'm electric too. All right. In this slide, we can see the fiscal year 24 implementation of the new stormwater rate methodology, including the 15%, just hold that there just in case, I don't know. Including the 15% increase that we are proposing. As you can see, well, it's not me. Yeah, as you can see, the rates are divided into buckets, which is what the resolution from 2022 established. We have the multifamily bucket, the single family and commercial. And the way that they're calculated is shown in this slide presently. So the multifamily units pay a base fee annually of $22.72. The single families pay a base fee of $47.19, and the commercial we're not able to detail it in this sheet because the commercial is based on the trip generated based on trip generation by land use. So each commercial property has its own. That's the reason why it's not being shown here. The values shown here are only average square footage. Yeah. All right. Maybe this is worth it. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the annual fees. I think this works better. All right. There you go. Aside from that base fee that I just mentioned, each property, depending on the impervious square footage, will be charged. Can you turn that one off? This one off. Perfect.
We admire your cool composure under technological pressure.
Well, I would say practice, but not really. My voice carries, so I'm pretty sure it'll get picked up by those mics too. All right, so the annual fee for property is calculated by multiplying the square footage, 86% of the total fee. So the remainder is calculated by the square footage of the property. Thank you. Of the property times the property's actual impervious square footage. And here you can see averages of how much each property would pay depending on the size. Ultimately,
May I interrupt one question? I remember the trip generation component for commercial. It's been a while. Is there an permeability adjustment that applies to the commercial sector as well?
Well, the trip generation overview is it is established by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and they come up with how many trips are generated average weekday during peak hours by each type of land use. So that's why the multifamily, as you can see in that slide, has the same cost for all the multifamilies, regardless of whether it is small, medium, or large, because the Institute established that the generation during a peak hour during the weekdays was approximately 4.54 per unit. And they established that for multifamily units, regardless of the size of the unit.
That I recall, but I'm asking, let's say hypothetical, in the future when it's time to resurface one of the commercial parking lots, and they opt to do a portion in permeable material.
Okay.
At that time, is there an adjustment in the rate because their permeability factor has improved?
Yeah, so that's something that right now we're not looking at, but in the actual survey, these rates, it's not there. However, as an administration, we're working on a process where if a resident changes their impervious to pervious, or a commercial facility changes the perviousness of the area, that's something that we're considering, then giving an adjustment and a credit based on what the action is that they've taken. But right now, in these rates, it's not, but we will look at an administrative procedure to accept that.
I'd encourage that.
I would just suggest also in the ordinance that we adopted, if you recall, we had a base fee, and then we had that was fixed, and then we had an impervious area calculation, which was the second component, to deal with site-specific properties, their issues. We also included a provision that allowed for an independent study, if you recall. So if a property owner does redevelop and they think that their stormwater system has improved, they have that ability to submit that to us.
That includes a commercial operator?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so the anticipated fiscal year 24 receipts, including the new methodology and the 15% increase that we're proposing, comes out to approximately $862,907 for multifamily property type, $905,000 for single family, and $336,744 for commercial, for a total of projected revenues $2.1 million, $2,154,650 to be precise.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, is this Fernando?
Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Cairo, I have a philosophical question, the determination of these impervious areas. I attended the meeting in December when it was first discussed, and I believe we had a consultant that applied some, this overall methodology was applied from Orlando, where we know by some facts that the groundwater is much lower than the groundwater in South Florida. How can we actually interpret that? Because in South Florida, the groundwater could be, during the wet season, could be down to 6 inches below the grass. And that, even though it is grass, and even though we do have, it's not pavement and won't run faster, but within, it has a very quick initial abstraction. And after that, we get runoff directly from grass. I'm not suggesting that we should consider grass as impervious, but what I'm trying to find out is we can develop an applied methodology for South Florida. I was a bit uncomfortable of us applying methodologies in the northern part of Florida, where the groundwater is in a very different location. And I guess we're building an argument or supporting an argument based on permeability on something that we know for a fact that once it rains, everything is impervious, because now you have water over water. So are we going to look at this? And I'm not suggesting that today we debate this, but I would like to see something that is much more realistic and a way that we can figure out to develop these stormwater fees for South Florida, as opposed to utilizing models that are not in any way, shape, or form, applicable to South Florida from another place. And that was my main concern from the beginning in the overall distribution of pervious and impervious. I want everybody to keep that in mind, because when we talk about pervious and impervious, we're not talking about, the water's going to go down below. It's not. The groundwater is going to rise. It's going to get to the grass, and everything is going to be wet. And when it rains, it will rain over water, and it's like raining over a lake. So we really have to look at that, because I don't think we have an applicable model. That's my interpretation on this.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here on this one, Carol. So, Mr. Mayor, obviously today we're talking about the stormwater fee and what we want to charge for FY24. I think Councilmember Vasquez brings up some interesting comments, but I think that would be something we would want to address at a different time.
Yeah, I think
I agree, Steve. I'm not suggesting that we should do it now, but it's an important thing to take into consideration. That's what I said. I don't think this would be applicable for now, but I am not convinced that this is the right approach. That's all.
we appreciate your comments, Fernando, and I think I speak for everyone up here. We have the manager and public works director look into it, and if it needs to be adjusted, we'll bring it back.
Yeah.
By the way, this is an annual decision, right?
The increase?
Precisely.
No,
The rate
no.
setting.
The rate setting.
The
The methodology is done. The rate setting is done annually.
Yeah, we just base the rates off of, we base the rates off of need, but it goes by the ordinance and how the methodology is applied.
I mean, it's a good look. The relevance of permeability versus impermeability is true. The magnitude of the relevance is, I think, what Fernando is raising, and that's an inquiry.
So now let's take a look at the current fee methodology, as well as a comparison between the proposed and this fiscal year 2023. As you can see on the slide, the multifamily property types are either paying less, including the new increase. They're either paying less or slightly more than what they are currently paying for fiscal year 23. The single families, there are, at least the smalls, are also going to be paying less annually. The largest increase then is shifted to the single family medium-sized homes as well as large. And as you can see, even the commercial, for the commercial, we have to only present the total, as we mentioned before. Going into detail for each type of commercial property would not be feasible here. But for the total, you can see that they are going to be paying less than they were for fiscal year 23.
I have a question. Can you remind us the distinction between medium and large? Is it solely based on lot square footage, house size, or is it mostly just referring to percentage of the property covered, with impervious?
I'll address that, Carol. It's actually done specifically by square footage. What we're trying to simply do is just show kind of a grouping. Obviously, otherwise we'd have to do an entire list by square footage. So and I don't know if we have the square footage up there. We might have in the previous slide. So Okay, it is up there. So it's based on an average, right? So we wanted to categorize it, so we came up with a group that's called small, medium, and large.
But each individual property, when we looked at this, when we first approved the methodology, was based on how much of the lot was covered.
Actual square footage.
So you took large square footage and did an average, but average square footage of covered area, right?
So basically what we did is, it's very simple when it comes to single-family homes. We basically split them into thirds, 3 groups, small, medium, and large. And so whoever was in the top third, whoever was in the medium third, who was in the small third, and we would average those out. So that's what you see here. But the actual application of the fee is based on square footage.
Okay, I think my question, I might not be being clear. If I have 2 identical lots next to them, one is vacant, the other has patios all over and a paved driveway and a really big house. The square footage of each lot size is the same, but clearly the square footage of impervious space is not. So the average is the impervious, right?
I think your example, maybe tweak it a little bit with a home on both, because if it's vacant, you don't get charged.
Okay,
Just
so
for
I have a
purposes of
shed.
discussion, you know, or a mackle and a big house,
Fine.
whatever.
But yes, I'm right. It's the impervious, right? We're not just saying like you have a giant house. So.
No, it is literally
Okay.
it's based on square footage. We just try to simplify it by grouping it, so we didn't have a list of 1,500 houses.
But, okay, so let me try.
It's based on impervious square footage, is the question.
That is the
Yes.
question.
Not what you said square
When you just
We're
say
saying
square footage,
specifically
could be
impervious.
Okay.
lot square footage, house.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, I was making the assumption we were talking about impervious. Yes, it is
no good.
based on
Yours.
impervious square
Impervious
footage.
area.
Good.
Okay.
And just
Thank you,
to
Frank.
also clarify, the small, medium, and large, they don't get a determination in their bill that your property is a single family. Let's go with single. It's not a single family small. What they get is a single family, so they get charged the base fee, which is $47.19, and then the other 86% of the charge is based on the square footage
Of that
the property.
specific property.
Yeah,
Impervious.
so
And I
this is
remember
only for
that they went
representation
property by
for you guys to
property.
see more or less where the money's coming from, but
I understand.
no house is going
Thank
to
you.
be.
And remember, there's we called it the appeal opportunity. If you felt like that you got the impervious space versus permeable space wrong, there's a process to
Yes,
dispute it.
there is.
Do you have any questions regarding the comparison? Okay, fiscal years. Then now let's get to the good stuff. What we accomplished this year. I may not have been here, but my team did a great job. So for fiscal year 23, we did a lot more than this. We rehabbed 4 wells in flood-prone areas. And by rehab, we mean we go in there and we clean it out and we make sure that it's working as efficiently as it is designed to work. So we're just maintaining it. We maintained 100% of the stormwater system. This includes cleaning 741 catch basins and jetting 86,000 linear feet of pipe. That is quite a feat for the budget that we are working with compared to other municipalities. We repaired stormwater conveyance elements, and by conveyance we mean what gets the water from point A to point B. That includes gutters, catch basins, and pipes. We also replaced 1 stormwater well pump. We perform routine street sweeping, inspected and repaired stormwater pumps, and by that we mean monthly we go in there and we perform maintenance on all the pumps to make sure that they're functioning, and if they have any issue we repair them. We also paid debt services on existing bond, but yeah. We also rehabilitated impeller housing that we have as a spare backup, so that at no point would we have a well not functioning just because it's broken. So we also have backups. And with that, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Benjamin, who is going to talk about the fiscal year 24 projected cash flows. Thank you.
All right, so fiscal year 24 with the 15% increase, we'd go from 1.8 to $2.1 million in revenue. That's the $300,000 difference that the manager mentioned at the beginning. The expenditures are there lined out. There's 2 transfers to the CIP fund for projects, $305,000 for the Garden District Flood Mitigation Project, and $100,000 for the Resilient Infrastructure and Adaptation Program. Additionally, as Councilmember London mentioned, we do have existing maintenance and operations of the current system. You got to maintain the current system before you can go to the new one. That costs $669,000, and that includes some of the operations and maintenance that Cairo just mentioned previously. There's professional services, there's personnel of the village that work on the stormwater fund. We allocate a portion of their salaries based on the amount of hours they work on stormwater-related issues, based as opposed to their other job functions, and that's about $278,000. Additionally, we have an existing bond in the stormwater fund, which is related to the 2013 project. It was refinanced in 2016 and has 15 years from 2016, so we still have about 10 more years of that loan, and the debt service on that is $475,000. And then lastly, the council earlier this year approved a planning loan from the Florida Department, Florida DEP, a Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan. That's those low interest planning loan of about 2% interest, a 10-year loan, and the debt service on that is $100,000. That would leave a net revenue of $137,000. So one of the questions came up as to why do we need this money after these expenses if the fund is still positive? And just like we mentioned the other night at the budget meeting, fund reserves are used for potential emergencies and unexpected expenses. They're match and collateral for stormwater grants. We got approved the planning loan. We now like to move forward to the design loan. And the design loan criteria, you need to show Florida DEP that you have the ability to be able to charge enough for stormwater, your stormwater revenue source. And lastly, SRF also has a mandatory requirement of a 15% coverage factor for their loans.
Can you comment on the purpose of the revolving loan, what it's going to be used for?
Sure. So it comes in 3 components. There's the planning loan, which we already got approved. That's probably the smallest portion of it. That was about $870,000. You move into the next stage, it's the design loan. I think we budgeted the total loan to about $3.5 million. And then ultimately you move to the third tier, which is the construction loan, and that's the major loan. However, you have to be a part of the planning and design to then get to the construction loan. And the construction loan is obviously very appealing because it comes at such a low interest rate compared to if we bonded out just our stormwater fund on the open market. So it's a great program to be a part of. We've already, step 1 got approval, and now we're moving through phase 2 and 3.
So this can be used to pay the vendors.
To pay, correct. And just to be clear, every phase of that loan with our charter requirements is any debt the village takes out has to come to the council for those 2 readings. So all we got approved so far is the phase 1, the planning loan.
2 questions. Of the debt payment, how much is interest, how much is principal?
Of which, of our existing loan?
The current 470-some thousand.
Right now it's about $70,000 is interest and $400,000 is principal.
So basically, you really have to subtract, we'll say $330,000 or $350,000 from the actual operations of the system for past payments. So again, when I was bringing it up, we get really distorted numbers on everything here because this is a cash basis accounting, which Benjamin will tell you is required by the state or whoever determines the accounting for governments. But for individuals, for people like us who are taxpayers, we really should be looking at what does it really cost us. And what it really costs us is the interest on this and then the depreciation or the amortization, depending whether it's a real or excuse me, property over the years. So really, we're not spending $1.7 million. We're actually spending on this basis about $1.3 million something, plus whatever the depreciation would be on the storm sewer system. Is that correct?
I would say we do pay $474,000. We have to pay the full principal and interest every year, but we need to generate.
I know we need the money. I'm not talking about what we need. I'm talking about how our numbers are so distorted when we get a capital item and we pay for it in 1 year and say, okay, this is what we spent. Yes, cash-wise, we spent that, but we didn't use it. When we bought a new fire engine, it cost $750,000. If it lasts 20 years, not that it will, but it would be $37,000 a year plus the interest. But that year, it looks like we spent $750,000. So the same thing here. I mean, just believe me that everything is distorted, and it really should be made so people understand what it really costs to operate on a regular basis, like normal accounting, not
So
on
I think
governmental
to
accounting.
follow your example, this is, so that original, the 26 bond, which was a 2013 project, was a $6.5 million project.
Yep.
This does represent the annual payments to pay that $6.5 million
Just
back.
that the principal is mainly all capital, all
I said it was
interest.
400 of the 475.
Yeah, that was
it was
exactly.
400 of principal and 75 of interest.
So that
each.
475 is actually would be an amortized part to amortize that.
Correct.
loan.
We've been paying that amount for 15 years. The project was $6.5 million. That was a one-time expenditure. So this is showing the annual debt service each year smoothed out over the 15 years, exactly like you're asking for.
Okay, in this case, it's that case, but
Yeah.
in general, I'm just talking about. And the next thing is, how much of this money is going to ACOM or to Black and Veatch?
So the planning loan is the $870,000 that we got through the SRF program. AECOM's work order 2, that village-wide drainage assessment, functions as kind of a stormwater model update, a stormwater master plan update. And so the portion of that is about $360,000 that we can get paid for through that loan. The remainder can be used for Black and Veatch's support in the program development, and combined that overarching deliverable, those 2 deliverables will be what we show SRF. They'll review it and say, you know, these projects are definitely something that we'd be interested in funding in the future. This is the process by which we do that. You're going to need to update your facilities plan. There's a lot more to go, but that's the process.
So part of this money is going to Black and Veatch.
Part, yes.
Thank you. Obviously, don't have to vote against it because I think it's a waste of money. So, fine.
This isn't the ideal moment, I think, in our discussion to introduce the point that Dr. Simon made, but is it appropriate to utilize enterprise funds and/or revolving loan funds for land acquisition?
Specific to stormwater.
Yes, for a stormwater strategic purpose.
I'm not sure we truly have that answer right now. We can definitely look into it. Obviously, one is our enterprise funds rules, which obviously is ruled by the state. We would have to talk to FDP on whether they would allow a state revolving fund. But that's something we can get back to you on.
Okay.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We hear you.
So today's vote, what happens if we do not pass it today? I have that, and I have another part after this.
Yes, as the attorney mentioned earlier, today's the deadline to certify the roll to the
Then we couldn't increase the rate. Today's vote is an increase in rate. We're doing this today because
Only
the
for
rate's
15%
it's
increase
increasing
in
above.
the rate is what today is.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, because I'll mention my concerns, which may not relate to what we're voting on today, but since everybody has spoken about it, but I have been a nay vote all the way through with this methodology. I don't agree with the methodology. I agree more a little bit about what Councilmember Vasquez and Steve Simon brought up, that I believe that the methodology is a bit flawed because it's not incorporating what I think is an overall benefit of having streets in public streets in a municipality, regardless of where you live or how much water comes off of your property. As a person who has lived in a condominium with private streets for 12 years, I use the public streets for bicycling with my kids, jogging, exercising. It's a great thing to have, and I feel that the methodology fell very short of incorporating an overall benefit to all of us together. I do agree with people should pay a difference between, what their property is running off, but I just feel that it missed that, and I agree that we should go back and look at this because I think that we've made a mistake and missed that. But if this is just for the 15% increase, I will be in favor of that. But again, I have major concerns still with the methodology that was previously passed.
Okay, so just to refresh everybody's memory, that methodology passed in last year's council.
In August of last year.
2022.
Okay. So, yes, you're right, Brett. We're not discussing the methodology, but as I told Mr. Vasquez, I think it's fine. You know, if you guys want to relook at that at some other point. But yeah, today's action is based on moving forward with the system that we have and planning for the next system.
One question, Benjamin. What's your cash balance in your enterprise fund for storm sewers?
Right now it's 1.4 million.
And at the end of the year, 1.4 million?
1.6.
So that's the surplus, basically, and then you're gonna get this, and why do you have to provide for unexpected emergencies when you already have over $1 million in the balance? Any reason?
Yeah, so really I'd say the second and fourth bullet point there is the second and fourth bullet points here is that the SRF program that we're dealing with wants to see a long-term projection. If we go out long-term showing 10, 15 years at the existing rate, you're not going to meet the debt covenant, the 15% coverage factor. So if we really want to get the golden goose, which is the SRF loan, this is the requirement to get it.
Could you share for everyone watching exactly what's so amazing about again, if you could just reiterate the SRF loans, because I think people will want to know why that's so important.
Sure. So the SRF loans are low interest rate loans from the state. So when we talk about low interest, we're talking about
the state revolving loan fund.
Yes. And used specifically for the stormwater project, to put it in perspective, they're about half the interest rate that we get in the open market. So if the open market was 5%, their program's running, I think it's actually below 2.5%.
So we get the money at half.
Half. Additionally, the payback terms are also very favorable. You're able to delay payment until you finish a phase of the project. So if we get a design loan, even though we get the money up front, until we are ready to do construction, you're able to defer the payments out a couple of years too. So they also are very flexible in terms of repayment as well. So the low interest rate and the flexibility of the repayments are what makes it a very attractive program for us.
When you put 15%, are you looking for 115% debt coverage? Is that the idea?
Correct.
So what is our annual debt going to be on the initial loan that we're taking out?
So on the one that we already approved, the planning loan is this 101,000, the last item here.
So obviously
for the design, well,
I'm sorry, continue.
For the design loan, which is the $3.5 million loan, it costs approximately $400,000 a year in debt service.
With 1.15 or 1?
Not including the 1.15. That's the actual payment.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you need another $400,000. Is that what you're talking about here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And right now, what do you have for debt coverage? You have 474,000 existing, right? So this would be an additional 400,000.
Correct. And we haven't, like I mentioned before, we've only approved this 100,000. The plan. We haven't gone to council to approve the design loan yet.
So therefore, we don't really need it right now.
When do you expect that to happen?
This year, I expect it to happen, but also you're required to show this while we're dealing with the application process. They want to see that you've done it, not a promise that, don't worry, we will get it approved. They want to see that it's done and have confidence that we can pay it back.
When will the existing debt be paid off?
2031.
Long term, okay. And that'll be a constant payment of the 400-some thousand?
Correct.
Okay.
You plan to be here by 2031?
He's going to run again.
Okay.
They wheel me in.
Please, you know you'll be wheeling in someone else.
Okay, we've heard from Mr. Moss. Mr. Vasquez, any other comments?
No, Mayor, not at this point. I'm fine.
Okay.
I think I've already stated
Excuse me, I got a question.
my concerns.
What will the total increase be, dollar-wise?
$300,000.
Well, how will that 300,000 cover the 15% coverage and all these other items? If we're gonna need 400,000 for this new loan, how are we showing anything by doing that?
So 2 of the projects here are one-time transfers. The first 2 items here are one-time transfers to CIP for one-time projects, the 305 and the 100. Those would obviously then be replaced by a $400,000 loan, give or take.
Okay, we need to do something here. This requires a public hearing. I guess in addition to what we've already done, but let me take a minute. I open the public hearing on this item before us. Seeing no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. We're on the item. Any further discussion?
I think it'd be good if someone could speak to the purpose of the 2016 project, just to put into context how we got to where we are.
Well, I think simply, and obviously none of us were here, but I'll address that. It was to upgrade the system that we know today. And it's obviously was probably a step and a Band-Aid to get us to where we could move a step forward. It wasn't the full solution. I can't say exactly, what the plan was, how it was done. We do know what the stormwater system and how it exists today.
Thanks.
Which is not adequate. Which is not adequate, and I probably need to add that at the end, which is not adequate.
Any money left in that, from that bond fund?
Anybody or
Any
anyone?
funds that were not expended?
No, all expended. Yeah.
I think, Frank, what my if memory serves, we installed a lot of backflow preventers, so the system was not changed in terms of its efficiency to take water out, but it helped with some of the sunny day flooding and stuff coming back in. I think one time, Ocean Lane Drive, we had a crocodile that found his way in, so the backflow preventers prevent that.
Yeah, I think that is the main element. I think also cleaning and some catch basin repair, some deteriorative conditions that were causing degradation in the system as it was, that were corrected.
Okay. I want to say a couple things on the item before us. Our Commissioner Dennis Moss at the county had a really good saying all the time. He would say, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. So this is our time here. I think that Ed actually said it very well. What we're doing here today is addressing a very deficient system. We have flooding problems on Key Biscayne. We need to address those problems. We're taking care of a dilapidated system that needs an overhaul. And secondly, we're planning for the future of a better stormwater system that will give us less flooding. A lot of these matters have not yet been decided of how much flood we're going to be okay with, and that's fine. Those are decisions that we will make coming forward. But in the meantime, we have to set our sights. And I think everyone on this council agrees, is setting our sights on what's to come. And this council isn't kicking the can down the road. We are beginning to address the stormwater system, the flooding on our streets that affects everybody in this community. So with that, seeing no other comments.
Do roll call. Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
please.
Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Yes.
Councilmember London?
No.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
No.
Councilmember Sardinius?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes, on the increase, yes.
Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any other business before us today?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye. We're adjourned.
Aye.
All right.